All right, everyone, let's see how we do on a bit of revised changes review. Oh, maybe it goes all right. Probably have to pause and restart a few times. I got a bit of the corona. I usually talk for a few minutes at a time before I start horribly coughing. If I can make it through, I'll post it. If I can't, well, then see. Um, And now that we're into revised changes, proposed changes is like, what are the new ideas? What's everyone doing? Now that we're into revised, we can start thinking about, okay, what things are where we expect them to stand? How do they compare to last stage? What kind of setups do we want? And then, of course, once we have finals, we start looking at specific picks. So for the most part, we've got the same general mechanics as the proposed changes. I like this one. I like this one. I don't care about this one. I don't think this one is that interesting because everyone just picks honor and it's the same as before. And the question becomes, are you getting the current war win bonus plus more acres or more honor, or is it just going to be the same war win bonus with less acres or less honor? Who knows? But for the couple kingdoms that ever grow, you can take acres. I think that needs to be fleshed out a bit more. I like this change. I know some people have objections, but I think anything that encourages the rank and file of a kingdom to support going to war is a good benefit to leaders, and the rank and file of wars really like science, so give them free science. PGs go up. I'm happy with that because I want to break TM walls, and I'm always able to do so. Libraries go up. I think the idea here was to benefit sages because they're a little bit lackluster, but you know, sage is kind of weak. Libraries helps everyone by end of age, so I think we might need to see a little change of that. But you also don't want sages too strong because that's a really boring game to play. Happy to see this. I assume that still means no unfriendly meteors, and I think that's a good balance. Just accidentally giving one meteor too much, one friendly, and then eating meteors is a big pain in the ass. Less of a big deal with like Fireball and stuff because those are still costing 3 mana. They're not very effective. But Meteor Showers is fully effective even at unfriendly. And the mana use isn't a big deal. The duration's Mind Focus buff, and this is in conjunction with the idea that it's now a racial personality spell that isn't really connected to like mystics. And support list, big nerf to the entire kingdom, and a mini buff to the buff to being a paladin, but it's not a buff to paladins in your kingdom, so to speak. Now paladins have these spells and no one else does, and those are strong. Um, I heard that this Mystic Vortex change won't be going through. You'll hear it here first. I didn't like support Town Watch anyways, so it is what it is. You'll still want, maybe in clerics for GP and Fanat. And now let's go for our first pause because I need to cough. Oh man, that's awful. Anyways, support list is the support list. I think in some ways this is more of a nerf to TMs than to core because, not having Divine Shield on your rogues, Illuminate Shadows on your mystics and heretics and rogues is a bigger deal than core. But I can see that going both ways in the argument. So I'm actually going to compare age to age on racial things rather than really going into picks. Once we have final changes, I'll start looking into picks a bit more. So avians, we've got a small buff, 5% attack speed, 5% birth rate. We've got greater protection built in, and we no longer have that 5% BE penalty. Elite cost has not gone up. Elite is slightly better in terms of both net worth, and that defense is a nerf though, so you won't have quite as much defense with your elite setting home. You're a little bit easier to ambush, but lucky for avians, you've got that ambush protection. So, pretty modest buffs to avian. Avian wasn't particularly high in its pick rate this age, but not too bad either. It's no orc, but still quite a bit below undead and orc. But it's ahead of, all the other sort of mediocre attackers like human dwarf. So you got a decent buff on top of that. But what you don't have is an offense buff. So they're really going to be stuck in that role where they're really good at taking out core, they're really sustainable and annoying to deal with, but they don't actually kill TMs. So you either need to build a kingdom that can kill TMs other ways or that can ignore it. Oh, jeez. All right. So, yeah, that's sort of the rundown on Avian. Dark Elf. Not a lot of change here in terms of the bonuses. Um, birth rate change is really nice for being an attacker. It really sucks to have slow birth rate as an attacker out of war and in war. But biggest change for them is the way their military is set up. They're no longer converting offense on trads into defense. So their role in war is way different. They're no longer, making a few big hits and then turtling up, presumably with some decent WPA to be sort of an economic tank. At least that's the way I enroll. I usually think of Dark Elf. Now they've got that offensive elite. They're not going to be very tanky. So now you're just really throwing offense into people and throwing your mana at people. So your goal here is to, match other attackers on offense, but then have that supplemented, mana onslaught you can throw onto people with the cheap casting with my focus. Training gown land effects, I don't think it's a big deal, but maybe if you go Dark Elf Warrior, you can get actually a fair bit of value out of that because you're going to be wanting, 20% training grounds all the time. So, and raffles, whatever. Mind focus is pretty big. I think mostly you'll just see this in land growth focused Dark Elf Heretic Kingdoms. We've seen it before. Because you can Nightmare so easily, you can always use all your generals, get a lot of gains. And on top of that, because you lower enemy defense so much, you can allow your cows to bring in a lot of acres. So even if it's not the best core on its own, even with the Nightmare, just the fact that it enables cows to have more incoming land and grow is really what enables the growth kingdoms with Dark Elf. And because early age, it's just effective. Dwarf. Almost no change to Dwarf. They do have that Illuminate Shadows brought in, which is a nice defensive tool. Stacking Illuminate Shadows with your high BE Watchtowers is a really big pain in the butt. You've got a little bit of offense increase on their Elite. I think that's really nice for Dwarf. Dwarf always struggles a little bit due to offense, in my opinion. So having a way to just compare yourselves a little better with other core is nice. I think Dwarf pairs extremely well with Raiders because dwarves don't like to use stables if they can avoid it. So the Raider really helps them out in that way. But, not a lot of change here. It's just a slight offense buff is the main thing. I think we'll see that a little bit across most of the races. Got Dryads. Dryads the only new race this go around. That's not true. I think Gnomes are new as well, technically. We've got a slice economic benefit to them. That's about 10% land. This guys you a few ticks and End War Ceasefire, let you eke out a bit of extra economy. These are two of the best tools for being chained and surviving well. This is a really big nerf to being chained and surviving well. And they just got a big ass elite that likes hitting people. Your goal here is have offense, hit TMs, get chained, maintain a lot of offense, keep hitting people. If you have a lot of them, good. If you have a few of them, good. You can run a few Dryads as a sort of bait. I think Dryad War Hero would do this really well, where you want to soak in a lot of hits, you abuse that minus honor loss by getting chained, and then growing rapidly due to your offense, getting chained, growing rapidly, always hitting high honor targets, and steadily increasing to the moon. That's how I see that sort of Dryad working out. Of course, many personalities will work out with them. When you have that sort of elite, You can make things work. You can cut a few elites per acre, match other people's offense, build extra defense, build extra needs, thirds or economy. A lot you can do with that, but it's definitely tailored towards being a chain bait EM breaker sort of thing. For some people, this barracks thing, ooh, look, a typo, accessed. Uh, no big deal. I think for a lot of people, it's no big deal. For some people, they think this is like a huge, huge penalty. I don't think it's as bad as people think. Like, you don't run that many barracks on people anyways. Find use for that land. Oh, well. Oh, what we got? Oh, we've got that rune production changed into guilds giving you a half tower. So this is probably a nerf in war, but a buff to like end of war ceasefire and sitting out of war. Because you can just sort of skip your towers out of war, and when pumping, you got, whatever, 40, 60 guilds sitting out of war or sitting while you're pumping, and you're still getting a lot of runes and helping the kingdom out, and nobody's like complaining at you. But then when you're in war, you just convert down to your 10 or 20 guilds, depending on your personality and role, and you're still getting, some 5-10% land value out of that. But that's probably less than what you were getting from an old elf, depending. I think it's very, very similar bonus. I don't think it's really a nerf. I just think it's flavor. 20% spell duration, that's really nice, assuming you're some sort of duration caster. Reads, I guess no chastity since it's not on any personalities. So greed, meteor showers, blizzards. Those are your main offensive duration spells that you'll be using. In addition, that's buffing all your self spells. That's more offensive mana you'll have in general because you're only gonna, have to cast greater protection once in a war instead of twice in a war. Um, they struggle on magic defense when they're using that Mage's Fury, so it does make them kind of vulnerable if they're your like economic powerhouse provinces. But they're also pretty defensive if they want to be with Illuminate Shadows. That's very hard to Mystic Vortex off of a caster. You go something like an elf rogue, even then the shadows can be useful just to like mitigate some robbing and work okay in rogue versus rogue wars. Blizzard's a spell that you want access to. I can't remember if Fairy has it. They don't have it in, so you probably want an elf regardless, just to throw Blizzard in there here and there. The big military change is them getting that defect buff. Their elite's the same, just more expensive. I should mention for all the other races so far, except the avian, they have a significantly more expensive elite, usually going up in cost about 30% or more. So big buff on the D-spec. This sort of thing makes you a lot harder to break. It's 8-9% extra defense. That just goes a long way when you're only building that much better at killing dragons, better at cutting defense and getting more out of it, is what it is. But, I like them quite a bit. I think Elf is very strong. Whenever you can get defense based on a D-spec, that means your end of war ceasefires have a lot more universities and guilds in them relative to something like Fairy or Halfling this age, but not last age, where you're spending a significant amount of the early age prep time building up that elite base. And if you ever have a bad war, there's a long recovery period for Fairy, so that's the sort of benefit you have to Elf. I do think we'll see these be weaker late age by a fair margin when looking at the top performing provinces, maybe not the average. See that how you will. Fairy, we've got an interesting fair bit of changes. We've got a 20% TPA swing, a 10% mana or WPA swing in the other direction. If you even those out, they're getting a fair bonus overall to their TM output. They've got Chastity now. They're still having Ghost Workers, but they lost Blizzard. Um, Again, Blizzard's a spell you want. If you're running Elf and Fairy, it's the same. If you want to run only Fairy, well, now you don't have Blizzard. Not a big change there. Um, None of that's a big deal. They've got +1 defense on their elite, similar to the elf thing. More defense is always good. The highest defense race is usually the best TM late age, regardless of if it's a D-spec or an elite. That's just how that goes. But they have to contend with this new penalty. So what this is doing is for every 10% homes you're running as a fairy, you're losing about 2% population. So I'd say 25% homes is pretty normal for a TM throughout most of the age. You know, your mileage may vary. It can change early and late age and all that. But if you're running 25% homes, this is like a 5% population nerf, something we've seen on Fairy a bunch in the past. But it's not global, it's not always there. You can find other buildings to build other than homes. You can run 10 homes, extra 15% that's split into tower forts and watchtowers and thieves' dens and libraries. Late age, you can replace almost all your homes with just libraries, and it works out pretty well. The ghost workers helps your BE a bit, but you're either taking a penalty to your population when you're building homes, or you're taking a big building efficiency penalty by not. So that's sort of where Fairy's at. I think, oh, they also have like the biggest cost increase on elites. I didn't even realize there were only 1,300 this age. Explains why my fairies got so many of them so easily. Figured they were 15 plus. So, I think fairy's going to be stuck in a role where they. Also, I think that O-spec's wrong. I think in the document I saw before, their O-spec's supposed to be a 9 now. I don't know what the deal with that is either. Yeah, very nice. I think they're going to be the strongest at the end of age. I think some people are going to struggle a lot more using them than others. I think they lend themselves much more to having 3 or 4 wars running as a pretty hard attacker with mediocre TPA and WPA, high watchtowers, and just sort of waiting for a really good war win where you're going to have a few days out of war and you're pretty sure of it, that you can pump your elites really, really hard in that end of war ceasefire, and then swap into some guilds while you sit around waiting for war and catch up that WPA. That's sort of how I usually run my fairy in the early and mid game, and I think that's just as effective now as ever. Gnomes. We're back to the dreaded gnomes that I pick, no one else picks, and then I win with them. 10% population is strong because not that it gives you 10% more everything, but because it gives you like 20 to 25% more of one thing, and you can always choose what that thing is. 10% population can be 20% more defense, 20% more offense, or even more than 20% EPA or WPA usually. If you're running 12 elites per acre as an attacker, Gnome is running 15. If you're running 20 D-specs per acre as a EM, Gnome is running like 23, 24. That's the sort of thing that happens. Credit gained in combat. It's nice if you're doing stuff out of war. It's nice for the buildings in war. I usually don't find it reliable that you're drafting and training in war, so the spec credits aren't super useful. However, if you kind of skip training elites and just push the O specs hard, you can pump quite a bit of guilds. Get decent WPA, depending on the personality you pick with them. You pick something like a war hero, you got that mind focus and reflect magic. Uh, that can be pretty annoying to deal with. They go into war with some decent peasants. There's a lot of them. You can't control all of them. But, you know, how often to core legitimately draft a bunch and train? I don't know. So I'm still, you know, sort of wishy-washy on this. Credits train thieves. I don't think this is a big deal either. Again, it's great out of war. It's good in wars where you have soldiers. It does save you quite a bit of gold in End of War Ceasefire if you're training a bunch of TPA, but otherwise not a huge benefit. Minus 20% damage from Massacre. I think this is going to be nice in situations where you have a lot of wizards as an attacker, and they mass you trying to control your peasants, your thieves, and your wizards, and it's just not working. Attacking too fast. Your offense and your defense is managing to survive. It's going to be an issue for them. We'll see how it goes. They don't have great numbers. They're elite. While it's very cheap, I don't even know if it's much better. Yeah, it's 8% extra offense when mounted over the O spec, but is that worth investing in a bunch of banks and End of War Ceasefire? Probably not. So I'd rather just sort of train whatever you can afford for elites, convert whatever you convert, and focus on universities and guilds. Plus, if you have an O-spec offense and somebody hits you home with that really low elite defense, they're not able to kill your offense. And they're not easy able to ambush you either. An issue a gnome has is they don't have a lot of free build space. They need to build TGs for its hospital, guard stations, watchtowers, a lot of stables because it's a lot of population. It's one of those things where they want to pick a personality that gives them a lot of, quote, free land to try and make everything work, or they pick something like warrior and they just try to stack offense at you if you have that. So, it's something you have to math out based on the way you prefer to play your cores, what happens to that 10% population. Another thing to note, they grow really well. So if you're someone that grows or you get deep chained and you like a good recovery sort of race, Gnome is amazing at that. You can double explore and war and pump to the gills easy peasy. Halflings. We've got a big change in Halfling. Moving away from that population bonus, moving away from that TPA bonus, moving away from the offensive useless elite. Now Halfling is it's back that old home capacity. So this turns out to be a bit more than 3% bonus population per 10% homes. So what I would expect to see is you're running 30% homes, that's a bonus 10% population on Halfling. So you can apply those same rules I talked to about Gnome. You've got a 30% home Halfling, you've got 10% extra population. Now you're throwing 11-point elites onto that, and you can probably match Fairy and Elf for defense pretty easily. But unlike Elf, you don't have that super easy End of War Ceasefire because you still need to kind of run these homes all the time, and they're not as effective as banks. And if you want to run homes and banks to afford the elites, suddenly you've got no room for universities and guilds. So it's a bit more taxing on your build space in preparation than you might like. But their actual numbers when they get into war, well pumped, are very scary. I haven't run them, I just assume. But they're going to be really good. You're going to have the highest potential defense, highest potential TPA, things like that. Whether you get there is another story. They're also very vulnerable to getting hit and to being spellcast on reliably. So you need to ensure that you have that defense, that positioning within your kingdom land ranks and your WPA in order, and it's a lot to sort in. Cunning science efficiency is not great just because cunning science is so slow. If you invest heavily into this science, it's going to come out to be like 10% thief damage, which is significant, but it doesn't swing the balance of anything on its own. Not a huge deal. They've got no innate TPA bonus, but they've got invisibility, which is very nice. This bonus is strongest on hybrids and non-rogues, so your mystics and your heretics. But with heretics having that much larger than usual minus 75% thief losses, halfling invisibility isn't going to be as good on heretics either. So, a halfling mystic might do pretty well with that. Otherwise, it's a fine bonus to add to your heretic or rogue. Just usually you're trying to get value out of the minus losses more than just the plus T. which is offensive TPA only, so no defense bonus. They've also got Chastity, like the elf. So if you want to throw in, some halfling mystics to do your Chastity casting, maybe that's good. Divine Shield's a nice barrier against Amnesia and Fireball, which are things you'll see a lot as a rogue. So, it's just a nice little thing to have in there, which, no one else really has anymore because of that support spell change. No access to hospitals won't come into play very often. The only reason you're building hospitals on a pure TM is if you already know that you're getting raised bounds in the future. Not something you can usually predict. It just happens, and by the time you might want to switch to hospitals, it's already too late. So I think this will be very, very, very strong in the right hands, sort of like Fairy, but it'll be easy to mess up and a lot more fragile than people think because of the way the homes bonus works when you start getting added and Fireball. You see stuff. Whew, out of breath, out of breath. How are we looking on human? Human got some nice changes. I love this human change. I love the orc change. Human getting combat gains, I think, is a great way to mix up the race's traditional roles a bit. Human's always so boring to me. It's like, yeah, it's got mediocre military numbers and it's got gold. And usually it's got a little bit of minus losses built in or something like that. And it's attached to it some minor casting penalty like WPA or mana cost or rune cost. And it's just sort of meh. Always the most boring thing to play in the world. Now that you've got that gains in there, you can sort of throw it into different roles. I'm not saying it's the most exciting thing ever anymore, but it's something to make it a little bit tastier. Um, it's just another one of those minor stacking buffs. They've got, 5 small buffs, 10% sun, 10% minus loss, 10% income, and then a fair combat gain. You can just punch people a little bit harder. They've got, like Dwarf did, that +1 to elite offense. They've still got that slightly stronger horse overall. And, the elite cost didn't go up really proportionally with the others, so you're probably fine. Many people have complained about this elite net worth, and I think a few other ones like Dwarf people thought was really awkward. I don't know if that's getting fixed or changed or however you want to call it, more formulaic. I personally don't really look at it, but if it's a problem, it should be at a little bit. It should just be more or less formulaic and a little less punishing to provinces with high elite defense. Why? But, just adding one offense and adding gains, pretty big buffs. I think people will pick it. 16 offense plus gains. You're kind of looking like an orc, but with other benefits that orcs don't usually have. None of the drawbacks orcs usually have. I think he'll be nice. Might need a little something, something. I think it might be still a bit weak. I don't value combat gains super highly, but there's ways to make it more effective. Orkies. I like orcs. Um, I love kill-based orcs. I love stacking casualties with Bloodlust. You don't usually stack with Wrathful Smite, but that is something you can legitimately do. This was one thing that the Fairy Circle did really well, is we had pretty high defense. We had Wrathful Smite on all of our attackers and Bloodlust. And people would attack us. We had high defense, so they're only making 1 or 2 hits, and it's costing them a lot of offense and losses to hit into us. And we didn't really care about losses into our defense because it's just defense hitting you back. So I love this style. I want to play tanky styles with it. I want to build in minus casualties myself and get those exchanges really in my favor. I want to run, I like the idea of running Stalwart. I love the idea of running Onslaught, just pew pew smash. So we've got built-in 15% enemy casualties. That's on offense and defense. We've got the same draft cost. Losing 20% combat gains, pretty big nerf. but then you've got 100% swing and honor bonuses versus, and so that's a good 10% offense if you're a Viscount. You don't reasonably expect to be more than a Viscount very often, but still, up to 10% offense bonuses if you've got modest honor. If you're just a Baron, that's still like 6% offense. Minus science penalty. I think that'll scare away just enough people that I can pick Orc without being in the crowd. And their elite cost isn't that high. Science penalty might be right. I think 10% you can just kind of close your eyes and plug your ears and pretend that it's normal. No one's going to really complain. It kind of covers that honor change a little bit. It makes you a little bit worse late age, but your honor scales late age. They kind of cancel each other out in a nice way. And early age, your honor doesn't benefit you and your science don't. I think it fits good flavor orc. I think an honorable orc warrior, it's hitting people, it's attacking, to the death. They've got higher losses, higher kills. That's it. It fits the flavor. Why would they need science? They don't care about science. They're honorable and powerful. I think all around, I love this sort of orc. Again, someone mentioned orc net worth compared to other people and how it's all out of whack. I don't really care. It'll probably get fixed to some degree. We'll see. Undead. Oh, undead bonuses are huge. So what do we have? We've got the mindless casualties applying to defense and offense. Not the hugest thing. It enables different styles. Like it enables a tankier style of undead, but it doesn't really change their power for more traditional roles of undead where you're just hacking people hard. But it's something that's working. Like you can run a 7-8 spec per acre undead with a few forts now, and you're really hard to take down with just traditional attacking methods. They've got ghost workers. When you combine ghost workers with no food needed, um, it's you're saving a bit of land there. It's pretty nice. Um, it's like worth 5% beat or whatever. Still no sabotage operations. It's fine for most people. It's limiting on things like petty theft and bribe generals. Those are the things that your bad core can do for you, but you can still always get intel. Now they can train elites. Um, Still expensive elites like everyone else, but you can train them, and that's going to be a huge offense buff to undead. I think the average undead is running, you know, after they leave a war, something like 2-to-1 O-specs and elites. In war, it might be closer to 1-to-1 after some trading, but, after that growth and end of war ceasefire. So I think average undead offense is going to be up like 20-30% as they fill out those elites over current age. So big benefits all around. Buff here, buff to the elite, and then they get hit with that 15% military wage penalty. So if you cannot pay your wages, doesn't matter what your defense or offense is, because it's plummeting fast and you're inefficient and you'll just lose. Someone with lower wages always loses to someone with higher wages. That's an awkward way of putting it because these are higher wages, but whoever can maintain the highest wages usually wins any fight just because of how efficient military effect modifiers are. So make sure you're greeting every undead you fight all the time. If they drop their wages, who cares about their military numbers? They're not doing anything interesting. Sort of how you play. I think there's a lot of options to this undead. I think you can play tanky. I think you can play suicide. I think you can play hybrid. So I like the idea of a lot of options. Their max offense is out there. You won't even need to go warrior to be breaking TMs. All around good. I like having a lot of high offense options in the game that all still have a different feel. Orc, undead, dryad, they all feel very different, but they all still encompass that high offense role. So happy to see what we've got out of that. Getting into personalities. What do we have? How do they compare to last age? You've got an artisan that's almost identical, the tiniest little buff to that capacity and production. I think artisan's pretty strong if you build it to really resist Night Strike. The recent nerf to thief damage combined with artisan's resistance against greater arson makes it such a big pain in the ass to get through their watchtowers and Night Strike them. And the main idea when I fight against artisans is I just hope they can't do enough damage while I completely ignore. I'll chain them if they're easy to chain, but usually they got high defense on top, and it's just a big pain in the ass. They've got guard stations, 8 D-specs per acre, a bunch of watchtowers, just a big pain in the balls. But if they don't have enough offense to break my TMs, I usually just ignore them, fireball them, and maybe when their building efficiency is really low, then I'll take them down when it's a bit easy. Now, with the change in how the races look, orcs, dryads, undead, all three of those I think would make really, really strong artisans. They benefit quite a lot from the dungeons in war, even things like towers and farms in war. It's a nice few percentage to slip in there. 30% better homes isn't decent in war. You can use a few of those. The build time can be useful in war. You get your land in before wave, stuff like that. But what's really a big benefit this age is with such big elite cost increases, the way I evaluate every one of these races is assuming a full elite offense because that is quite attainable most of the age for most people in whatever kingdom you're in if you build for it. And if you can get it, you should get it. Next age, there's some legitimate, it's pretty hard. You're not running Shepherd, you're not getting that economic bonus on every one of your, stupid 400 orc shepherds on the server. Now, all those elites are 30, 50% more expensive. Suddenly, getting that Tree of Gold bonus lets you get full EPA. You're fully mounted. You've got homes, you're maintaining your building efficiency. You're going to be really scary this age. I think Artisan's one of the best sleeper picks. It'll go underpicked, but I think for 80% of the age, you're just going to be way stronger than everyone around you. Now that's not always great. Now sometimes people say, oh, they've got way more net worth. They're just not going to war you. And an issue with Artisan is you're not as net worth efficient, because even if you have way more troops, way more elites, none of these bonuses are making your troops really better. So that's sort of the trap they fall into, where if you're warring someone at even net worth, it means they're probably bigger than you with lower EPA, and then they're leveraging their, bonuses against you, and they just come out ahead. That's the trap you can fall into, at least if you're running a lot of artisans. Now, take it how you will. I think Artisan's really good this coming up age, but you got to know how to play it. Make sure you can break a TM, or that you can like raise out core effectively. Something that utilizes your sort of turtley nature where nobody's actually doing stuff to you right away. Paladin. What do we think about Paladin? Paladin's nerfed quite a bit without salvation, losing that 5% military casualties. So that's about 14, 15% military casualty difference. Hitting out and hitting in. Big nerf for them just as an individual. And then now they can't cast Illuminate Shadows or Divine Shield on people. That's another nerf to the individual. That's a nerf to the kingdom. That's actually a buff to the individual. Now you have Divine Shield and Illuminate Shadows and no one else does. You're actually taking less thief and mage damage. All your other attackers are taking more. So you have a better matchup against them in that way. But then you lose that military casualties, and I think you lose some of that buff. So I think if this was buffed, you'd actually see a pretty strong paladin. But I think they, perhaps wisely, perhaps, lame, ooh, unfunly, nerfed that a fair bit. So I don't know. I'm open to either point of view. I probably won't run these as a core, but someone that wants to really fly under the radar, you're not boosting any numbers on your kingdom screen by running Paladin, but you do have strength built in that other people just might not realize. So I think it is what it is. You're just going to run a few of them, cover the self spells you do have, maybe one less. Maybe you only need two Paladins now because you're just casting Great Protection. And that's your entire role. And it's kind of. Actually, is Raffles Smite? Raffles Smite still available, right? Huh. Yeah, so everyone has Raffles Smite still. Well, there's that going for it, I guess. I say This is what it is. Not a lot going on. Heretic, same thief production, buff to the Wizards Lost, and a slight buff to their science. This is big. That's a 50% difference. A difference between losing 1/4 thief and 1/2 thief. That's double. That's really big. Now you can run like a 30 watchtower heretic and still spam your full stealth out on riots and night strike without really caring. And that leads to a really strong style of play. It's less offensive, but it's really turtly and it's really hard to deal with. And you can usually still cut through core because core are always bloating. They've got low raw numbers, and as long as you've got the science, you've got a few TPA. It just means you can hoard so many runes, so much gold. You're not getting anything. You're not getting rioted. You're not ever at risk of like greater arson. And I've run into some really strong heretics that play that way. It's not usually the way I play. I'm usually trying to cut as many watchtowers as possible across the kingdom, TMs and core. But that style has a lot of issues, no doubt. Um, so overall, it's a fair buff. But I think what you'll see is that Mystic and Rogue probably have greater buffs. Mystics and Rogue are gaining revelations. That's going to be about a 30%, 50% book increase across the age. Those two small science buffs here don't make up for it. So really, it's going to be about how valuable is that Fool's Gold and Nightmares. I think if you're not specifically running a group of heretics, you're probably not as heretics and rogues, but you can certainly make them work. Not weak, not super strong, but this here is something to watch out for. This starts getting into laughably hilarious territory that you just never lose thieves. You lose no thieves all the time, and that's hilarious. And you can build yourself super defensive against thieves. You've got a lot of WPA, so you're not getting cast on. You can run really high defense with relatively low TM numbers in terms of TPA, WPA. Soak up a lot of honor, and then once you hit that higher honor ranking, then you start ramping up the raw numbers and having that raw power and start competing with mystics and rogues on that front. It's something that scales in a different way than just science does, so that's nice. But if you play it lane, it's kind of also if you played as core, this is going to be really fun too. Like a avian heretic that doesn't lose thieves when striking sounds great to me. Is what it is. Mystic, it's exactly the same. Not exactly the same. Mystic lost Mind Focus, which is like a 50%, 25% WPA pump reduction, going from 250% over other people down to 200%. They gained Revelations, so does Rogue. Just going to really help them scale with core into the age. Big issue you have, especially with early age pure TMs like Halfling or Elf and most fairies, they have really awful science. Like I'm pretty sure I have at least one attacker with double the books of at least one team if I go. It really just helps. It also helps hybrids because it just gives you a little something to scale your attacker into the late age. It's just that fun. It also lost bonus minus losses on spells. I didn't realize that before. In longer, harder wars, this can be pretty significant. This can be worth like half a WPA after a couple days. So, a minor nerf there. No big deal. Thought maybe this was transferred onto Heretic, but I don't see it there. Oh well. Same old. Little bit better life for your TMs, probably. Defenses are up, but offenses are also up. Rogues are identical, except now they have Revelation. So same deal. Stronger is hybrid, stronger is pure, stronger in every way, but it's a scaling strength. You don't even notice this Revelations until 5 weeks. Raider is a new personality. We've seen it before in various ways. What Raider's giving you is +1 elite offense, -1 elite defense, and +1 warhorse. So for most attackers, this is adding a +2 to their elite total. And in many cases, that +2 to the elite is about as strong as the warrior bonus, sometimes a little stronger, a little weaker, but it's right sort of on that cusp. But then you're gaining the 10% free stables and immunity to steal warhorse on top of it. So you're kind of trading this warhorse and stable land to the warrior armory bonus. They're getting 10 to 20% free armories. You're getting 10% free steel warhorses or free stables. And then that immunity to steel warhorses is hard to translate into a land benefit, but it's pretty significant. It's the quickest way to reduce someone's offense, so it's certainly something to look out for. It's also one of the reasons why you tend to run like 20-25% watchtowers on all your attackers, is just to stop that blanket steel warhorse. Because it doesn't really do much better than 15% watchtowers at blocking a night strike run after Guard or Arson, or even letting someone bloat a bit and then doing stuff to them. So it might also free up some of your watchtower space. I think it's pretty good. I like that it's similar and different than Warrior. Twice as many warriors means twice as many high offense people. I think high offense is the way to play. So hopefully the server takes note. Whew, Sage sucks. No one picked Sage last age or the age before it. It's not really getting any better here. Slight change to learn resistance is quite significant, really. But other than that, I don't know. Especially with TMs getting more science through Revelation, you don't really have that sort of difference there. Immunity to Plague might be nice, I don't know. Sage needs a little something, but as always, you can't overbuff Sage or it really makes an age unfun some people by the end. You need to look at age length as well. Usually we're hovering around that 10-week exactly mark. If you go into the like 11-week range, 10.5-week range, that really extends the viability of Sage by another week because they really start coming into their own in the last 2-3 weeks of age. So I wouldn't mind seeing them get a little something extra. I'm not sure what it is, but it would just be nice to see. But don't overbuff it. Tactician is identical. Yeah. Tactician's amazing. It's the best anti-core core. 5 generals is amazing at chaining. It's amazing in chain fights when you're recovering and growing. Being faster than people is great. That's about all there is to it. Maintaining thieves is really nice, combined with clear sight. It just stops people from hurting you. But there's no real change here. I think tacticians were among the strongest personalities across the board. The one thing it doesn't really do is it doesn't really help you take on TMs. So if you still need to break people's TMs, probably want to stick to Warrior, War Hero, Raider. But if you want to make sure you're beating the other core, or you pick a race that's naturally high offense, then this is your go-to. I think Dryads can use this to get around that need for barracks and sync with other people will be very strong. So Tactician's incredible. One general added on to the traditional just accurate espionage and attack speed is a huge benefit over what you usually see. I think they'll have no problems filling that role. But what you don't see is them getting buffed at all. And I think we're seeing most other attacking personalities and personalities in general get buffed a bit. So does that mean they're behind now? I still don't think so, but I could see some people thinking that it's not as. War Hero, we've got some sweet buffs. They're losing the elite conversions, but I don't think that's a huge thing overall. Doesn't bother me much. Have it or lose it. Out of sight, out of mind. It's good in some situations, but it's not overall a huge deal. Bigger deal, losing Hero's Inspiration is tough. It's a lot of minus wages, and it's so helpful in war. Yeah, that's that. It's a super valuable spell. So losing that's tough. But you're gaining 5% military efficiency, 35% wizard production, and reflect magic. Reflect magic, as I've said in past videos, scales with WPA. The harder you are to cast on, the harder it is to deal with, reflex, can't amp these easily, all that stuff. So combining these two things is super strong, and they're getting a 5% military buff. That's huge, man. Is it busted? I don't know. Honestly, I have a lot of high honor war heroes, and for the most part, I think they're just simply worse than warriors. You're not getting that value out of the WPA or TPA on the attackers. But now that you can leverage more into a defensive attacker mage hybrid sort of role with war hero, I think they have potential to be very strong. Still, they're scaling. They don't come out swinging that hard or anything. Right? So you need to have a few war wins under your belt, and you need to play them in a way where they're gaining a lot of honor, losing a lot of honor through attacks specifically, gaining that honor again. You want them going to the top, going down, top, going down. So you kind of want to run them suicide-y, tailor their hits towards gaining honor however you can, stuff like that. When they're really big, make sure they're pumping wizards. When they're small, make sure they're pumping military extra hard so they can grow, stuff like that. I think this is the biggest buff to any personality. 5% military efficiency and reflect match. Amazing spell, 5% military efficiency. You know, that's as good as like 7 or 8% OME. That's more than half of the warrior bonus, just in addition to what they already had. So I think War Hero is incredibly strong. Busted, sort of teetering on the edge there of being too strong. And this is a guy that I want to pick it, so don't nerf it, please. Warrior. Warrior loses a little bit of offense. They lose. I don't care about the training time. It's good in end of war ceasefires if you have arranged wars to pump deeper. That's about it. I don't care about this because I just don't think about it, so I won't notice. Valor Science. It's nice to have something that can kill dragons stronger, but usually what you're killing dragons with is also your offense, so kind of reverse scales with this. Not a big deal. It's nice to have someone that can kind of kill dragons. But the big difference is this training grounds are also armories change. Armories give you minus train cost, minus draft cost, and wages. So if you're running 10 to 20% training grounds, you're looking at like 15 to 25% lower wages, draft cost. The draft cost isn't huge in war because you're not drafting much. The wages is pretty big in war, but you're losing building efficiency, you're not keeping your land up as much, and that sort of thing loses value in war. I think there's sort of a perfect part of the sitting out of war stage of the age where warriors are going to be super strong. They're going to be able to maintain their wages, draft, train specs, replenish troops from trading hits way more efficiently than other people, and then still get into war and be like, hey, baby, I still have 12% extra offense. So I think some people undervalue it. I think some people overvalue it. I think I'm exactly correct because I'm the smartest utopian alive. And so that's how that works. Um, Overall, pretty happy with these changes. There's a few less cool out there ideas than proposed. The natural thing you see, we propose a bunch of things. Slowly, David C. kicks every good idea out the window. Our last second tells us that's not going to happen. Or just lets something go through entirely. Doesn't say anything or address it even once through the entire age, and now we don't even know if it's working through the next age, aka the massive honor change that was introduced last age that just never happened. Who knows? David C. doesn't even know. David C. doesn't even know what I'm talking about. Most likely. Anyways, I'm Smiles. That's the rant. I hope you enjoyed this Corona edition of Speaking into a Microphone.